KoitCast.
Hi, Preston, and welcome back to KoitCast.
Be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries, it's an honor again to have you on, so thank you. I suppose the first question should be, how have you been?
Oh, not bad. Keeping busy, which is good. Always working hard. I'm working on a sequel to a new book. My latest book was Symmetry, a true UFO adventure, all about one lady's UFO experiences, Dolly Saffron. So that's keeping me busy. Also doing my YouTube channel and investigating and interviewing. I'm always keeping busy.
Busy, yeah. Well, I think that's good, very much so. Because I spoke with Anne Albers yesterday, and we were hitting on the creativity thing, and she was saying creativity is the reason we are here on this earth, to be creative, to allow us our positivity and creativity to flow. Do you think the similar way?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel like Earth is kind of a school, a tough school, definitely.
Very
But
tough.
we're here to learn, gain wisdom and just sort of expand our knowledge and hopefully go on the pathway towards enlightenment.
Yes, as they all say. And
Yeah.
if it is all of those things, I'd like to think that I'm on that path. I'm not a master by any means. I'm low on the ladder. But it's nice to see that obviously you as well are also on said path.
As I'm not going backwards, I'm fine.
Bang on. Let's jump straight into things that have happened since we last spoke, and it was nearly 2 years ago, I believe. So let's jump in with Booga spheres. What do you think on that subject?
I am on the skeptical side of that, having looked into it. I don't know of any other cases, in the literature that really match up to this. And I know that there are quite a few researchers who are skeptical of it. If you take a close-up look at the little holes surrounding it, they're kind of rough. They're not
Yes.
It doesn't look like ET technology to me. I really can't say I'm not an expert on this. I haven't dug deep into all the research that's going on with it. I know there were some reports that the resins were tested to be some, I don't know, several thousands of years old, 20,000 perhaps, something along those lines. I don't know. It's a very unusual case. It would be interesting to speak to the first-hand witness and get a whole, deep dive into this.
Mm. Is it
But
something you are planning to look into, do you think, or not interested? Something for somebody else?
um, I wouldn't say I'm not interested. I'm following the story closely to see where it leads. But the more I've looked into it, I'm on the skeptical side. And I think as a researcher, we sort of have to do that because you can't be too careful these days. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I usually focus more on people who have direct contact with entities, ETs, or what have you, which I think holds a lot more pay dirt. But this is certainly interesting because if it's real, that it truly is an ET artifact, well, that could change, the field of research. But we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, it is a watch this space sort of thing, isn't it? I've been thinking recently about it that I wonder if there's some sort of like old technology left by a previous civilization on this earth, be it 20,000, 30,000, whatever. And maybe they're like old satellites or observation things, whatever. I don't know. Maybe technology from old civilizations is there flying about.
We can't rule it out. I
Mm,
think, the work of Michael Cremo, who wrote Forbidden Archaeology, along with Richard Thompson, a must-read book because he basically lays it out in black and white that there were previous iterations, advanced civilizations,
mm.
no doubt, before ours. So it's entirely possible that perhaps something could have survived that. This could also be man-made for all we know, because I do think we've reverse engineered ET technology. And there certainly are a number of reports of metallic spheres floating around. But as far as one with all those symbols on it, uh, I would like to know what's inside this thing. I hate to chop it up in half, but that
It's a
might
Kinder
prove.
Surprise. That'll be just a small toy in there or something. You never know. Um, what do you think of Chris Bledsoe's apparent belief that something big is coming end of next year, early 27?
Uh, I met Chris Bledsoe, a really
Oh, lovely.
wonderful, yeah, kind gentleman. We shared a table. I think. Well, I met him at any rate at a conference, and I approached him because I did write about him in one of my books, UFO Healings. He was healed of Crohn's disease. There's no doubt in my mind that he is an honest and sincere man with a legitimate story. He's absolutely a contactee. Now, as far as the prediction of something big coming, we'll say a lot of contactees get that message. And there's variations of what this might mean. Anything from, ETs coming en masse in large numbers to a shift in the way we think about things. Or I am skeptical of a lot of these predictions because I've heard them many times and they kind of come and go. uh, so I don't know. I always kind of like to wait and see. It's always a good idea to be prepared. So I am definitely following his story quite closely because he is a very prominent figure in this field. He's had a lot of influence. There are a lot of people uh, meeting up with him and seeing these orb-like lights. So yeah, I'm convinced he's a genuine contactee. I know he is pretty religious as well and talked about sort of second coming type event. So I don't know if that's going to be what's going on here because we have a tendency to overlay our own belief systems onto our experiences. That's inevitable. And I certainly don't fault anyone for that. But it's interesting to me because, yeah, that is a somewhat common prediction. I would say the most common I hear is that ETs will be coming in large numbers. So perhaps
That,
that's what he's talking about.
well, I hope so. Do you know what? I really would love to see that. As a, not like an invasion sort of thing, but where the ships like from those invasion movies come en masse, and it's like everyone's like, "Whoa!" And then it turns out, we're here. Here's the contact. Boom. That would just be amazing in our lifetime, would it not?
Yeah. It's an undeniable event where they
Yes.
stay for long enough where it can't be denied. Because essentially, we have had disclosure on the part of the ETs. And I say that because it's true.
Mm.
We have well over 1 million documented UFO encounters from various databases across the world. I mean, Newfork and MUFON here in the United States, the National UFO Reporting Center and the Mutual UFO Network, between them have some 2 to 300,000 documented cases. And that doesn't include APRO, another UFO organization, and NICAP and QFOS and others. And of course, France has a UFO reporting service. England has several. Most major countries have UFO reporting centers of some kind. So if you look into the history of UFO sightings, reaching back to the modern age of UFOs, 1947 or so onwards, there's so many cases involving not just sightings, but frankly, landings in humanoids. There's tens of thousands of cases of humanoids. So I think the ETs have kind of done their part to disclose their own presence. I wrote a book called Schoolyard UFO Encounters, which documented well over 100 cases. And I could probably double or triple that because I've received so many other cases. This is a perfect example of what we call a UFO display, where they come down and show themselves intentionally. This is over a fairly large group of people, and not just children, of course, teachers are there. I wrote
Mm.
another book called UFOs Over Drive-In Theaters, which again shows this very typical sort of display behavior. And there's other events like this where there was an event in 1956, I think it was, 57, thereabout, over a soccer match in Italy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I know the case.
Remember
Yeah, yeah.
that one?
Mm.
20,000, some people saw it. Uh, so yeah, they fly over concerts, sporting events, this sort of thing. So my point is that kind of has happened, but that's always fairly brief, maybe 20 minutes to an hour at most, and off they go. I would love to have one that's, a day long, perhaps.
Mm. Something that's
So
irrefutable and it has to be on the media, and it would just go around the world in an instant.
yeah, I mean, in
Yeah.
today's day and age, with everyone having cell phone cameras, even an hour long event would probably be enough because just think if the Phoenix Lights, for example, had happened today, a lot more people would have filmed it. There was an event over Mexico City in 1991, which was filmed by some 20 or 30 people. This was during the solar eclipse, actually, and a UFO showed up. So Mexico has been much more forthcoming than a lot of major countries, and that's one of the reasons. But I think ultimately the only reason we don't see more of this is because there is a cover-up. This witnesses are mercilessly ridiculed. Evidence is suppressed. So is information, and there's disinformation and misinformation and lies and fear and confusion, which has really slowed the progress of UFO research and made the vast majority of witnesses reluctant or unwilling to come forward and share their encounters.
Well,
So,
well, if this big event that's supposedly looming does away with all that malarkey on behalf of the human race, I would be ever so grateful, and obviously millions of people like me would be the same.
yeah, the only people who wouldn't be grateful, I think, are the folks behind the cover up,
Yeah, the ones with the control and the money. Yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly. Interesting. Three Eye Atlas. What are your thoughts on that? Because there's been some talk that this supposed comet may be some sort of craft again. What do you think there?
Yeah. I'm just going to be brutal here. Shame on you, Avi Loeb. You know, because I am sorry to he said something like, "Oh, it's a 40% chance it's an extraterrestrial craft." How do you come up with a number like that? Now, I've been in this field for a long time, and I'm a huge astronomy buff. I took it in college. I'm by no means a professional astronomer, and all due respect to him, he knows more about comets than I do. However, if you survey other major astronomers, none of them are saying this. This, by all appearances, looks like a comet. Yeah, there are some unusual aspects to it in terms of its behavior and speed, but it has a tail. It is moving in the way a comet would move. Comets can change direction as they outgas and hit various, gravitational bodies, so to speak.
Hmm.
It is quite large. I don't know of any single UFO report that describes a craft like that. This is displaying none of what we call the observables of genuine extraterrestrial craft. My main beef with all of this is ETs don't travel that way. Having spoke to so many contactees, it's my understanding that ETs can traverse interstellar distances, but do so in moments, and they do it interdimensionally. So for this thing to be plugging along at, yes, it's many thousands of miles per hour, but that's not how they move across interstellar distances. It would take forever.
Mm.
Uh, Even if you are approaching the speed of light, it's going to take years. It makes no sense that this would be an extraterrestrial craft. And to call it a threat is also disingenuous, I think, because that's pure fear mongering. You have no evidence whatsoever that this is an ET threat, which he actually, went and said that. So I don't think that that's true science. That's speculation, not based on any fact whatsoever. So that's why I'm a little on a hard line here, because as a scientist, it behooves us all to be completely objective. Don't make judgments unless we know for sure.
I,
So
I agree. And the same
I
thing
think it
happened
is
with what the Oumuamua one prior. Statements were
correct.
made.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee it was. It didn't do anything alien-y. It just carried on like a rock would.
I'm delighted to see astronomers taking this subject seriously, because there's this myth in the UFO field that astronomers don't see UFOs, which is patently not true. I wrote a chapter in one of my books, Not From Here, outlining some 20 prominent astronomers who've seen UFOs. Like Lincoln La Paz is one, and Clyde Tombaugh. He discovered Pluto. He had a really close-up UFO sighting with little portholes all around it. Saw it with his family. Frank Halstead, many other, major astronomers have seen UFOs and were proponents for this subject, but really became ultimately victims of the UFO cover-up. and were ridiculed. Uh, Jacques Vallée, astronomer, he's was shocked to see them actually covering up and erasing data showing the existence of UFOs. So this is how difficult it is to move this subject forward, because even astronomers are being essentially discouraged from reporting UFOs.
Hmm.
So yeah, kudos to any astronomer who's willing to speak out and say this subject is real and there's validity to it. So I'll give Avi that.
Yeah, that is something.
I-
Hey, on this note, actually, have you got any cases where an astronomer has been looking through some sort of equipment and has seen them cross the path of the equipment?
That's quite rare. Usually, I mean, they'll have to train their telescope on it because, as we know, a telescope covers a very minute portion of the sky. But I do know of cases where people have seen a star-like object cross their field of vision through a telescope. So yeah, I mean, there's actually a list of some 300 astronomers, including amateur ones, who have seen UFO activity, and that absolutely does come up. Yeah.
I know I've heard of the ones where someone have like they're trained on the moon. Obviously, it's our nearest solar system object, and you can get quite a big view of that in your viewfinder. And there's been reports of craft or whatever going across those. Have you seen those videos? Do you put legitimacy into them?
Uh, I am not a photographic expert, so it's very difficult for me to comment on things like this.
Fair enough.
I am very interested in it. But in today's world, particularly over the last 20 years, I'm highly skeptical of photographic cases that don't have a witness standing behind it who's willing to identify themselves and say, this is what I saw, this is how it arrived, this is how it left. I photographed it because you have so much stuff out there on the internet that has no provenance, you know. We don't know
Mm.
who took these pictures or where they're coming from. And with the advent of AI and Photoshop, and the hoaxing is out of control right now. If you go on Facebook, you can see pictures of Atlas with little portholes
Oh, with
and
that thing
just,
on it, and yeah, I've seen them.
I mean,
Silly.
it's absurd. So I am skeptical. I like the older reports of the photographs. I don't know of any involving telescopes. So yeah, I'm kind of again on the fence about that. Uh, and as I mentioned earlier, I do focus more on cases of humanoids, which I think has a lot more pay dirt to it. But it always just irks me when people say there's no evidence for this stuff, because there is. The photographic record is immense. It's huge, and there's a lot of really good photographic evidence out there. And beyond that, radar and landing traces and implant removals and physiological evidence. It goes on and on.
And those
So I
implant
think it's a,
removals are the ones I put most stock in. I think they're ace,
yeah,
those cases. And
they're incredible.
perhaps we'll jump into some of that later on. I've got two more generic topics that we'll talk about before we jump into cases and stuff. The American drone sightings wave. Um, what's up with that? Because I heard somebody say recently that they've resumed. Is that the case from your perspective?
Yeah, as far as I know, it is still ongoing, and the publicity of it is what kind of waxes and wanes. This began in New Jersey primarily last year, late last year of 2024. And I initially, looking at this from just my own research perspective and what's available on the news, sort of thought that this is probably our own stuff, not ET. Because we do have really advanced technology. We have very large drones. We have essentially what I believe anti-gravity. So I found it very suspicious how this was being covered in the media as well, because we were having a lot of congressional hearings at this time. There was a new election. There was a lot of stuff going on, and this was sort of just almost like a distraction.
Yeah, distraction. Hmm.
But I do, you know, I talked to people like James Goodall, who is an aviation historian, and Michael Schratt, and researcher Cheryl Costa, who has an intelligence background, and other people within the military. And they pretty much aligned with what I'm thinking here, that this is our own technology, which, judging on the behavior of these things, I tend to think that that's what's going on here. Because when you have a UFO wave throughout history, like, Gulf breeze perhaps, or the Hudson Valley wave, or any UFO wave, there's usually a variety of reports, not just sightings, but landings, humanoid reports, people being taken on board. We're not getting any of those. So that's another reason I'm thinking, well, I don't know about this one.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
fit the overall scheme, does it? Yeah.
no, it's still going on, as from what I understand, but it's just not getting the publicity, and it's perhaps not as active as it was.
Mm.
But there was a recent wave of drone sightings over somewhere in Europe, I believe. Gosh, what was it? The
Denmark,
Netherlands?
was it? Denmark?
Denmark? Yeah.
Denmark rings a bell, yeah. That's right. They blamed the Russians for that one, didn't they? But that's a distraction again. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could,
Interesting.
I don't know. I honestly think it's probably us and the Chinese and all at the very highest levels of government. I believe the quote, folks behind the cover up are working together. I really do, to cover this subject up. So I'm not sure I would just blame one country for any of this, but it's a mess trying to get to the truth of what's going on here.
Yeah, there's so much water around the world being muddied, and it is so frustrating. So it's frustrating for me as just an observer casually, but for someone like you who's involved in the direct research of a lot of stuff, it must piss you off.
Yeah,
To use
it
a swear
absolutely.
word, I know, but it does piss you off.
Yeah, it does. It's frustrating, and it makes me angry to think that these folks behind the cover up, which, are the highest levels of the military, of the intelligence agencies, the industrial complex, have the gall and the temerity to say that, oh, well, we can handle it and you can't. It's unfair. It's disingenuous to say that none of this is real. Well, you yourselves believe it's real. Yeah, it's infuriating. It's beyond infuriating. This can't go on. It's not sustainable.
Well, Chris Bledsoe, if your thing is true, we can wipe away all this crap that's muddy in the water, son. I really hope that is the case. Right, so the last generic topic, still related obviously to UFOs, whistleblowers. There's been a steady conveyor belt of more people coming forward. Where do you think it's going from here? Is that just going to open doors and a shed load of people come out, or is it going to be forced to close?
I think disclosure is inevitable for the one simple fact that this subject is true. And my hearts go out to whistleblowers because the ones we've seen is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there are an enormous number of people out there with NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, who have been viciously threatened. I mean, we know this. People have lost their lives over this subject. So my hat's off to whistleblowers who find the courage and strength to come forward at great personal risk. Dylan Borland talked about this in the most recent congressional hearing, and I found his testimony to be very compelling. But this is shaky ground. We've had whistleblowers for decades now, and they're only now getting real publicity and speaking before Congress. But clearly, I think some of these are bad actors. They're people putting forth the disinformation. Because some of the statements I've heard some of these guys say are not true, such as, and I don't really want to name names, but saying that we have the ability to fool ET, and come down and shoot them down. No, you don't. ETs are profoundly telepathic. Their technology is so far beyond ours. It's just not going to happen. That's not true. I don't believe that for one second. I think some of these whistleblowers are pushing a narrative that they have been either forced to or are working with the folks behind the cover up. I think some are absolutely genuine whistleblowers who just want the truth to get out. But that's where, it's really hard to tell who's on what side here.
Yeah, who's good, who's bad? I'm thinking of the ones, right, that if you're being forced to do something, if well, I got your wife and kids, whatever, you've been forced to do this, to a degree you can understand that. But the ones who are perhaps are voluntarily muddying the waters knowingly, I don't get how those people have the gall to do that to humanity.
Exactly. I mean, do what's right. Tell the truth. It's not that hard. I think sooner or later, this cover-up is going to collapse under the weight of its own lies.
I agree.
Because now I think that's exactly what's happening. The government has not become credible. I think this is one of the main driving forces behind disclosure and why we're seeing people within government saying that there is validity to this subject. Because to say otherwise would make you irrelevant, not credible. And that's the last thing they want. They want to retain control of the narrative. So they are essentially, their hand is being forced.
I like that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more disclosure. But here's the way I look at it: we're never going to get it voluntarily, unless it's to their benefit, and unless and until the folks behind the cover up, the Pentagon here in the U.S. and intelligence agencies, admit to the validity of such incidents like the Roswell UFO crash in 1947. Or another that I'd like to hear the truth about is the Malmstrom incident in 1967 in Montana,
With
where they
the
shut down
missiles. Mm,
exactly,
yeah.
or the 1952 incident at Edwards Air Force Base with Eisenhower, where UFOs landed. And this was allegedly filmed, and the reporting on this is really good. Or the Capitol flyover of 1954. Come on, admit to the truth of that. We know it happened. And unless and until you do, why should I listen to anything our government has to say?
Mm.
Tell the truth.
Oh, to
You
see
know,
those videos, eh? Especially that 52 one.
yeah, to show us these little white dots,
Oh, I thought you meant because the resolution was so crap back then. That's all you'd see.
they have. We know that fighter jets have cameras all around them. They have incredibly good, clear photographs of UFOs, ET craft, very close up. And we have yet to see any of it. And I don't know that we ever will. So I'm a little bit jaded when it comes to our
Mm.
government telling the truth because they never have, not once. Their record on this is dismal. They're still covering it up. And at some point, I don't know what it'll take, a revolution. Governments collapse, they don't last that long.
Well,
So,
well, that's what's happening these days, isn't it? I see a great awakening around the world. It doesn't have to be necessarily related to UFOs, but people are awakening to propaganda that their own governments give them and lies that they're force fed. People are waking up all the time to that. So it's just one small shift from, let's just say, the COVID narrative as an example, into UFOs. That's all it is.
exactly. Yeah, it's funny because if you look, I got into this field through UFOs, ufology. I came as a skeptic, but when I started researching, the US government, I was appalled because it's not just UFOs that they're mishandling. I mean, they've irradiated soldiers against their will. They fed them hallucinogenics without telling them. They gave
Yep.
them venereal disease. They've absolutely sterilized disenfranchised segments of our population. How is this okay? It's not. There's no circumstance where this would be allowable. So I am not happy about it. I'd love to trust our governments, but they've dug their own grave. And they've done this. It wasn't us who did it, they did it. So it's their fault that people don't trust them.
I completely agree. And comeuppance is a lovely thing if that ever does turn up. We shall see. We shall see. Let's jump into some cases. Have you got recent cases that have come your way that you can talk about, or ones that perhaps you're ongoing research in?
Uh, Over the past 3 years, no, I'm not getting any recent cases. And according to some of the contactees that I'm still in touch with, and there's quite a few, they're not having encounters. In fact, Dolly Saffron is really my go-to gal. She's had very extensive encounters. And according to her, she says the ETs have actually left Earth and our solar system due to the instability of our magnetic fields. So you can look this up from a scientific perspective and see that, yeah, in fact, our magnetic fields on our planet have gone down like 30, 40%. So I'm not having any recent cases. I'm always interviewing people who perhaps have had encounters a while back, which is always fascinating. And I think old cases still are very important because every single case, even a simple sighting, adds to our knowledge of what's going on here. And to me, the onboard cases hold the most information and I think have the greatest potential to answer all the questions surrounding the subject, such as who are the ETs, where do they come from, why are they here, what's their agenda, why are they taking people on board. So yeah, I'd say I'm still doing a lot of research with Dolly Saffron and her experiences because they're very extensive. And there's only a handful of people I've ever interviewed. And it's hundreds of people who've had, face-to-face encounters or onboard experiences. The vast majority of them have quite a bit of fear surrounding their experiences. Often that will dissipate as they continue to have these experiences. But initially, it's quite frightening for people. And also, some have difficulty recalling them. There's an amnesia aspect that's very difficult for people and for researchers as well to get to the truth of what's going on here. So I think probably interviewed maybe 5 or 10 people who are what I would call a fully conscious contactee. So those are the cases I'm really kind of continuing to work with. There was a guy in England who about 2 years ago had his most recent experience with a gray coming into his room. His case, I don't use his real name. I call him Gary.
Okay,
He's
well, Gary, I've not heard Gary's story, so would you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a wonderful gentleman. He had a pretty abusive childhood, unfortunately, and left home early. But as a young child, his family went on vacation and a UFO followed them home. And it was right after that, and he's like 6 years old, that he started waking up to see these little grays in his bedroom. Of course, he didn't know what they were back then. And his parents were not at all receptive or nurturing to this. So he really had no recourse, no support system whatsoever. He was an only child and just dealt with it. And it kind of petered off and ended, he thought, until he was about 19 years old when he woke up on board a craft, fully awake. He never has used hypnosis. So this is why it always kind of makes me wonder why people say, oh, this is all based on hypnotic regression. No, it's not. The vast majority of people I've interviewed don't use hypnotic regression. I've shied away from it because I don't want people to say false memory syndrome doesn't hold water. So he woke up on board a craft. There was this tall gray sticking sort of what he perceived to be a needle into his brain. This was, of course, not a pleasant experience for him
I
by
imagine,
any means.
yeah.
And he said it was quite painful. And despite his screaming protests, they just proceeded. He says, these guys don't care about anesthesia. This is one of the more negative experiences I've, investigated. Though he has had positive experiences as well. So that was one of the early, truly fully conscious onboard experiences he had. There are quite a few. Once he woke up on board, and I'm jumping to this one because it's so unusual. His wife was there. She's seen them as well. So, he's not just one witness.
Well,
His
she's
son,
she's on board or she's seeing them in the room.
she's seen them in the room.
Okay.
Uh, that was much later. But at any rate, he wakes up and he's immersed in this tank of water of breathable liquid. This is quite unusual. There are, a number of cases, certainly, in the literature where people describe this. I call it the UFO breathing pool. Now, we ourselves do have super oxygenated liquid that you can breathe. They've kept mice alive for quite a long time underwater with this,
Mm.
hydrofluorocarbons. So it's probably something along those lines that's going on here. At any rate, he was underwater and breathing, and his wife was there, and she's in full-on panic. Could see three grays looking down at them into this tank, uh, and what looked like two human-looking gentlemen who he thought might be military, but honestly he couldn't say. Uh, and his wife was in pure panic, thinking, what are we going to do? Are they going to hurt us? And he says, no, no, they always return us. Calm down. We'll be okay. And that went on for a short while. And the next thing he knows, he's waking up in the morning. His wife has no memory of this. He knows this is real because he's had so many experiences. He can feel them coming. On one occasion, he was walking downstairs to go to the restroom, which was unfortunately on the far side of the house, and came downstairs, and there was a gray standing in his living room. He absolutely panicked, and the next thing he knows, he's waking up in bed. But it wasn't long after this, the same thing happened. He walks down the stairs, there's a gray in the living room. This time he was prepared. He ran up to this thing and choked it, grabbed its neck, and it started windmilling its arms, saying, "Get off me, get off me, get off me," telepathically. And something came from behind and kind of knocked him out. He woke up in bed. He's woken up several times to find himself levitating out through the window, in which point he blacks out. He did have one remarkable experience where he woke up on board the craft in the control room, standing up, and there were two little grays in the pilot seat. And there was a window in front of him, and he could see the landscape going by. And he's like, "Oh my God, I'm awake." These guys don't know I'm awake. What's going on here? So he's kind of just standing there stunned, watching the landscape go by as they were apparently bringing him home. And finally, he's like, "You know what? I'm just going to say something." And he shouts out to the two little grays, "All right, lads," and says it really loud, which caused one of them to jump up and start running around the room in a complete panic. And the other turned to him and said, "Oh my God, you're awake. This has never happened before." And he told them, he said it was funny because the tables were turned. He said, "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you," which is, of course, what they always tell him.
Mm.
And they said, "You won't?" He's like, "No, no, I'm fine. You're fine." He learned to get along with his experiences in a way, so they're not entirely negative. And he said, asked them, "Why are you doing this? Why are you taking me?" And he said they got a sort of a pensive, sad feeling and said, "We're not allowed to say." And he asked them, "Will you let me remember this?" They said, "No, we're not allowed." And that's all he recalled. He woke up the next morning and did remember. Uh, a few hours later, it just spontaneously came back to him. He thinks they probably did allow him to remember. But
On the
yeah, he's had a
sly.
lot of
Yeah.
experiences. They counseled him about his life on one occasion, uh, where they asked him, what do you want to do with your life? So he's had quite a bit of experiences. Also profoundly psychic, has a lot of out-of-body experiences. His wife as well. This is one of the rules with contactees. I think an onboard experience or direct contact with the ETs sort of wakes that up, these abilities in a person. So yeah, almost always contactees will have a wide variety of psychic and paranormal events.
Now, there's a lot there to hit on, but I'm going to have a few questions if you don't mind. The
Sure.
anesthesia thing, right? I know, I think we talked about this on our last time together. Is if these beings are doing these things to us, I don't understand why they cause the pain when they could quite easily negate that via the means of anesthesia or even something else. Anesthesia must be known to them as a thing, and I imagine there's going to be no expense or currency involved in their existence. So why wouldn't they use it, do you think?
I think they do. So here's what I think is going on here, because if you look at the vast majority of cases where people do describe a painful event, almost always the ETs will reach out and perhaps touch their forehead, and immediately relieve the pain. That happened with Betty and Barney Hill. I know of many, many cases like this. It's not anesthesia as we would know it. It's some sort of mental process where they do this. And with Betty Hill, she's like, "Oh, you're hurting me. You're hurting me." Immediately relieved her pain and afterwards said, "I'm sorry. We didn't mean to cause you pain." Now, when a person is on board and they're laid out and they're being physically examined and they're in fear, now any nurse will tell you this. You so much as touch a person, like, "Ow, you hurt me."
Oh yeah,
People
yeah.
they'll feel actual pain, which is related more to the fear than the actual event. Under hypnosis, you can burn a person with an ice cube and it will blister up. They've proven this. So there's some of this going on here. I don't want to, gaslight any witnesses. So please don't get me wrong here.
Sure.
There are people who've certainly felt pain and my heart goes out to them. And I don't know why the ETs won't just relieve that. But I think often what's going on is that a person is in such a state of panic and fear. Totally understandable. No, I get it. That has got to be a very scary experience, especially if this is all new to you and you don't know what's going on. The unknown always creates fear. It's one of the reasons I do this research. But I think that's quite rare, honestly, because I've interviewed a lot of people and almost nobody describes pain. So I think there might be a few things going on here. Definitely some. One lady I did interview, she was pulled on board and they told her she had cancer, which she knew. She had been going to the doctors and undergoing all kinds of painful procedures. And they said, "We can cure this for you." And they did. And she said it was excruciatingly painful. But they did. They cured her. Lycia Davidson is her name. And I met her in LA at a MUFON meeting. And I've talked to other people who've had that kind of experience as well. We're like, "Oh, yeah, it was painful, the operation they did on me, but it was to cure them, to heal them." So, yeah, pain does come up. It's not
But it's
super common.
it's outliers then, really, rather than the norm.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, that's exactly what's going on. That's why people are being pulled on board. It's a physical examination, it's a checkup. This is one of, and this is easily demonstrably provable. It's one of the main ET agendas, healing. I've got over 300 cases in a book I wrote, The Healing Power of UFOs, which I documented, reaching back over 100 years, coming from all over the world, from pretty much every major researcher out there. Philip Mantle, Timothy Good, Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith, Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, John Mack. I could go on. Brad Steiger, Tim Beckley, Ray Hernandez, Peter
Reel them off,
Fiore.
Preston. Come on.
I'm just saying this is a thing. And most researchers have multiple cases of this kind, which didn't get a lot of attention because, fear sells. And people are very reluctant to come forward and say, "Oh, well, guess what? ET's healed me." But it's actually a very consistent feature, with some researchers thinking, perhaps 50% of onboard cases involve healings. In my own research, it's a little lower, maybe 30, 25%. But sometimes people I don't think know they're being healed.
Yeah, that was my next question. That might be part of something that they haven't remembered, yeah, or didn't know at all, yes.
Yeah, when people have missing time, it's often because they're very scared. And ETs, it's not their, wish to cause fear. In fact, the first thing they say is, "Don't be afraid. We're not here to hurt you. You're okay. You're fine. Calm down. No harm will come to you." Almost always, that's what they tell people. And again, understandable that people go into straight up panic. But when they do, this is when they have missing time. And they might not ever look into it again. So all they're left with is this traumatic incident that gives them a negative viewpoint, when really that's not the nature of the experience at all. I've talked to people who've had identical encounters. And one was like, "Oh, they're evil. I hate them." And the other's like, "Well, it didn't bother me at all. I thought it was quite interesting." They had the same things happen to them.
Which suggests Like they're following a script, so to speak, with each person they interact with, they're following through a procedure.
Yeah, I think if one thing we can fault the ETs for is perhaps bedside manner or not understanding the depth of a person's fear.
Yes.
Maybe they do, or they just have a real difficult time dealing with it, which is actually, I think, what is going on here. Because we do fear, we're trained to fear. Uh, there's it, fear is a guiding force in most people's lives. So I get it. Earth, like as we mentioned earlier, is a hard place to live, and the horrific things we do to each other, the way we treat each other, is not okay. That's another big ET message against war and aggression and greed and corruption and pollution and the destruction of the environment. They're like, what are you doing? This is not the way people should be living. So I think if you take a real objective, in-depth look at the onboard experience, you'll see that no, it's not nefarious. It's not a negative experience. It can be very scary and often or usually is, but they're not trying to hurt people. I'm not getting cases where I see sadistic behavior, like I'm going to hurt you, this
You
sort
haven't
of
got any
thing.
cases of anyone coming back without a leg, as an example, have you?
No,
There you
quite the
go. And
contrary.
yeah, yeah, I like that. Um, yeah, the fear thing's weird with humans because we can be scared just by turning around and like my girlfriend's there as an example, and she hasn't announced that she's come up behind me while I'm animating or something. So when you do turn around and then there's an alien creature there, you can understand that visceral fear. I mean, I know I would be like that. It would be like, what
Oh,
the?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had my own encounters. Uh, it's in my family. My brother had a very close-up encounter. He ended up with a little implant, so I think he was probably taken on board. My little sister had a very close encounter with a UFO twice, one involving missing time. I never really had anything until well, I may have as a young kid, but it's somewhat ambiguous. I did have a missing time incident as a 9-year-old, but when I was 27, right after 5 years into researching this, I had a little orb come down and I had a missing time associated with it. And it would later have a little, what I believe to be a gray coming into my room. I've had a number of sightings. But when that little thing was in my room, I woke up because I felt what I thought was a cat walking across my bed. Don't have a cat,
Hmm.
but it woke me up. So then I saw something real slender and thin standing next to my bed, and boy, my heart raced.
I bet.
Um, but I did have an onboard experience, which was wonderful.
And you
I'm
remember that consciously.
fully conscious. It was in
Wow.
2022 on my birthday, actually. And it was terrific. It was absolutely benevolent, wonderful. One of the best experiences of my life. It was,
Can you divulge that? Would you mind?
sure,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm working very closely with contactees. So occasionally I'll see UFOs with them. Or so this is the sort of thing investigators will tell you. There's sort of a bleed through, and you start having your own encounters because you're associating closely with people who are having encounters.
Hmm.
And that's what happened here. Uh, I think to some extent I'm already in it. But on my birthday, I woke up and I was being pulled out of my room through space. And it's weird. I recognize this feeling. I'm like, oh my God, I know what's happening here. Because there's this weird electric feeling when you're being pulled up into these things. And I'm looking around me. I'm like, oh my God, it's deep space. Look at this. This is crazy. And I'm like, this went on for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. I'm like, well, I'm getting taken. Wow.
Could you see your body, or would you think it's astral body taken?
I think it was my physical body. I did not
Okay,
see, my body lying in bed or anything like that. But then again, I didn't look.
sure.
And I've had a lot of out-of-body experiences. I could talk for hours on that.
I know, and actually, I've written it down for us to talk about later on.
So at any rate, I suddenly found myself, I didn't see the craft until I was inside it. I was in the center on a table. There were short little guys to my left, which I didn't really pay much attention to because there was this lady looking down at me who was a hybrid. I'd say a hybrid. She didn't look fully human. She looked half gray, half human, but she had very pale skin. She was extremely slender, wearing a magnificently clean, skin-tight white uniform, and had a large, sort of egg-shaped head, huge wraparound blue eyes, very tightly curled white blonde hair, and was really beautiful, actually. And I tried to sit up, and she gently put me down and said, "No, no, you need to make sure you're okay." I said, "I'm fine." That was a very electric feeling getting up in there, so I can see why there were, but I felt like I had experienced this before. But in fact, I do have memories of it. So they finally let me sit up, and I jumped off this short little table and walked straight to this very tall gray that was standing, I don't know, 10 feet away. I was in a round room, 50 feet wide, domed ceiling, windows all the way around. There were several people in there. There were some grays on the far side, which did look like, whoa, my God, look at those. That did make me like, wow. Took me back a little bit. Mostly I was focusing on this very tall gray ET, who I now know is actually Dolly Saffron's main contact. I was on board her craft, is what I'm trying to say. The craft that
Okay.
she's taken on board. Talada is what she calls it. These craft are alive, essentially. At any rate, this is her main contact, who she calls Mama. A tall gray, and she was beautiful. She was the epitome of grace and dignity and wisdom and compassion. And I rushed up to her in absolute awe and looked up at her. And a huge head, large wraparound eyes. She was wearing a white smock. And she tilts her head, gives me a little smile, and says to me telepathically, "So, is this what you thought it would be like?" And I said, "No, this is much better." Because it was. I felt like I was in an environment of absolute nurturing, wisdom, kindness. It was different from here on Earth, where you have to watch your back every moment if you're out.
Even with the fear of seeing those things, though, the greys that would shit you up a bit, you know.
Yep. Even then, you know,
Wow.
I don't, at a young age, I was a fearful person. My mom died young. I thought we were all going to die. I was living in fear, and I got over it. And I realized the universe is essentially safe. Yeah, you can be hurt, but you can't live your life in fear. So I've never been a fearful person, really, as a young adult and onward. And I see UFOs, and I'm not running away from them. I'm running towards them. You know, because whatever happens, happens. You're gonna be fine. You get through it. I don't know, maybe that's a factor here, but I felt safe.
Okay.
And I said, "Can I explore?" And she said, "Sure, go ahead." And I walked to the far side of the craft where there was nobody. And I looked down, and there was the Earth, which, by the way, is round. I could see the curve of the Earth.
No, I believe it's round. Don't worry.
Just saying. And I was like, wow, would you look at that? And I turned around and I walked up to, there were two rows of people standing there, and they were in a daze. They were entranced. They were awake with their eyes open, but they were not responsive. And I walked up to a lady and I'm like, "Hello, what's your name? I'm Preston." She wouldn't respond. And I looked at the others. There was a black guy there. There's different ethnicities. None of them were responsive. So I looked around, and there I saw by the other side of the room who I perceived to be a Korean girl. I worked with someone who looked just like her, so that's what I'm saying. I don't know. She was Asian. At any rate, she's having a blast. She's looking out the window. She's smiling. And so I walked up to her. There's a little railing around this window, which is at a 45-degree angle looking down, like a cruise ship kind of,
Mm.
or I don't know, like it's hard to describe. At any rate, I
I know
looked
what you
down and
mean,
there,
like an observation tower. They've got those in Vegas, haven't they, on the stratosphere? I think that sort of
just
thing.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I look down and there's the Earth. This darn craft drops down at a gazillion miles an hour. I mean, we must have been 500 miles up. I'm trying to determine just from pictures of, people in space how exactly high up I was, because the Earth wasn't a sphere way the heck out there. It was um, curved, but you couldn't see the whole thing. So several hundred miles up, drops down in 1 second. She's screaming, woo! And I'm just speechless because we stopped right above the ground and the craft rocked slightly, which I could feel. I couldn't feel the acceleration going down or anything. It was slightly less than normal gravity. And almost immediately the craft went straight back up. And I turned and I walked back to the tall gray. And she handed me this little tumbler, a glass tumbler of a greenish liquid, and told me to drink it. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I sniffed it, trying to, and I couldn't really sense anything, smell anything. So I took a sip. It was very thick, very viscous, bright green, tasted a little bit like lime, kiwi, very
Nice.
subtle.
Good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was sweet, slightly. And she started to take it back. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? I thought this was mine. I want to take another sip. And she looked at me like I was crazy. I said, okay, I mean, if you want. So I guess most people don't have that reaction. I don't know. But I wanted to memorize it, right? Because this is an extraordinary event. I can't believe this is happening. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, the whole time. And I took another sip and blacked out. That's it, essentially, in a
Now,
nutshell.
had you wished you had this experience, not this exact one, prior to this? Have you been wishing for it in your mind for a long time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ever since I found out UFOs were real, I wanted to see one. And I was out hunting, looking for them. And I did. And I started having closer and closer encounters. One's, some with telepathic messages a few times. So it's almost like it was circling around me. But as I examined my childhood, yeah, once at age 9, there's 6 kids in our family. You don't miss a meal. You just don't. You won't eat.
Hmm.
And I was in my room waiting for lunch. We all ate together. And I came out and they're like, where were you? I'm like, what are you talking about? I was in my room. I'm like, no, you weren't. I'm like, yes, I was. I'm like, when's lunch? I'm like, we ate lunch an hour ago. I'm like, what? So that I remember. And I never really put the pieces together until, years and years later. But that, I feel like that was missing time. It is in my family. I don't know if it's generational because my parents would never talk about it. My mom never mentioned it, and she died fairly young. My dad hated the subject, was repulsed by it, which to me is a red flag. Because
Hmm.
anyone who has a strong emotional reaction to it, there's
Some
a
measure
reason
of
for
trauma
that.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you
But my,
mentioned your
my
brother had an implant. Do you think you've got one now or not?
I suspect that I do. I have zero evidence of it, but I think the vast majority of contactees do. It's been my experience because so many of these contactees will go to the doctor at some point, get a head X-ray or dental or whatever, and the doctor's like, "Well, you have scarring here in your septum," or "What's this object under your tooth?" Or "Did you break your foot?" Now there's a little metal thing there. My brother, he found out one day when his wife was kind of palpating his arm, the inner side of his elbow. She's like, "What's this?" There was this sort of half matchstick sized cylinder or stick or something in his elbow. And he showed it to me. I'm like, wow, can I take you to the doctor? I know a doctor who's a field investigator for MUFON. He's like, I had to drag him there. He didn't want to do it. But I did. And the doctor's his eyes went wide. He's like, oh my God. Because there's no entry wound or no evidence of how this. He said, this is a foreign body, no doubt. Can I x-ray you? My brother's like, no, don't want to do that. And it disappeared not long after that, which they sometimes do. So
Yeah,
that
I mean, I know Whitley Strieber says his ones move in his
Yep.
ear, so that you would suggest that could also be the same thing, unless it was obviously removed directly. Why would your brother have that reaction of no, I don't want an X-ray?
This is something that a number of contactees uh, react that way. And I think it's sort of a measure of just being told not to mess with it, perhaps post-hypnotic suggestion, like leave
Mm,
this alone, or they just don't want the attention. It there's a burden being a contactee for most people who often won't even tell their spouse or their close family or friends or anybody. Often they will, but not always. And they're certainly not going to go public. They, the fear of ridicule and disbelief and gaslighting is absolutely valid. And they don't want to go through it. And I think that's one of the main reasons. Hard to say for sure, but often people will react that way.
Have you tried badgering him, or did you badger him to get it sorted
Oh
and have
yeah,
X-rays and stuff?
I did. He doesn't want to didn't want to do it.
No, that's fair
And
enough.
the window there was pretty short because it was gone.
Mm,
But
well,
yeah, you know, his wife, my sister-in-law, is my artist that illustrates my books, and I would drag her to conventions, and he was very supportive. Don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't his cup of tea. He didn't really want to do it. He didn't go to the conventions. He's not interested. It's just a part of his life that he had a close encounter. It was just one, and he's moved on. Uh, I'm the one who's obsessed. I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the one who's had the most encounters. So
well,
it
it's
is
like
what
you
it
said, it's what you wanted. So fair play. If you're heavily
Yeah.
involved in it, I don't see a problem. It's like someone really liking a band, and then at some stage you're going to go to one of their concerts, aren't you?
Yeah. I will say my two nephews, so that's the next generation, have had encounters, close-up UFO sightings. One had a humanoid sighting. My sister-in-law had a humanoid sighting. My other sister-in-law was visited by humanoids as a young girl. So it's a lot more common, I'm gonna say this, than people realize. And my challenge to skeptics out there is I dare you to ask your circle, your family, your friends, your coworkers, dollars to donuts, you're gonna find someone who's had this kind of experience. You might have to ask 20, 30 people, but we all know at least that, well, most of us, I should say, have some close acquaintances who we know and love and trust, who are probably keeping secrets from you, particularly if you're skeptical. But even if you're not, because they don't talk about it, this is far more common than people realize.
Agreed. We don't even talk about moles on our butts to our family and friends. Do you know what I mean? So it's that sort of
Right?
thing. Yeah. Number of people knowing and stuff brings me around to this question, which is: you said there were 20 or 30 people, or whatever, on the craft that you'd seen, the ones in a daze and stuff. Did you recognize any of those? Short of thinking you recognized the Korean lady, would you recognize them if you saw them on the street again? That sort of thing.
Oh God, I doubt it. I didn't, it was a 5 minute long experience, and I didn't sit there and gaze into a person's eyes
Sure,
and
sure.
memorize their face. And I was gonna ask that Korean girl her name when the ship dropped, because I wanted to do that. And there are
See, now
people
I
who
wonder
have
if
done
the
it.
ship dropped because you had that thought in your mind.
I don't know. I suppose it's possible, but I couldn't tell you.
Hmm.
But that was thrilling when it did. I will tell you that that was fun. That was
Best
amazing.
fairground ride out there, yeah. um, Getting slightly ajar from yours onto Gary, I'm always highly intrigued when you have cases of fight backs or whatever, physical interaction between beings, and obviously grabbing that one's neck. Was there any like residue left on his hands or anything? Did he smell any? Do you know what I mean? Any trace evidence?
No, he didn't say that was, and I wish these events would be treated more forensically, where he would immediately like, "Oh my God, I've touched this. Put some rubber gloves on. Let's go to an investigator. Let's take skins." No, that rarely happens because again, this is very difficult for contactees, and I've had people like had residue on their hands, and they jump into the shower and try to get it off. He does say that it felt warm-ish, not super hot, but it was warm and leathery and sort of soft leather. Uh, he did have another incident where he woke up because he could feel them coming. They started to get to the point where they couldn't knock him out or immobilize him. And he knew they were in the room. And so he waited until they started to pull the blanket off of him, which they always do. He jumped up and sucked it in the face. And he said, "This thing absolutely screamed real loud, opened its mouth, revealing sharp, small teeth, and was furious at me. Says, "I think I'm in their bad books." Because later he tried to kick one, and they knocked him out. Yeah, right after he hit it, he says its face kind of scrunched in. It was very soft and marshmallowy like, but apparently wasn't hurt. Because I know I have talked to people who have hurt them. That one lady, she says its neck snapped. It went right down and it fell to the ground, and the two others scooped it up and they went back through the wall. So these things do happen. It's pretty darn rare because most people are immobilized by fright or by some perhaps force field. Hard to say for sure because fright will absolutely freeze people solid.
Mm.
uh,
But the other
so
bit about his case is that you mentioned that um, the two were sat there as soon as he mentioned he was awake, so to speak. They were, what the? And got out the way, very quick smart, which suggests either he's done that to him before or other people from their experience have reacted negatively and damaged them before.
yeah, talking to Dolly Saffron, she's been on board when people are being physically examined and they'll leap off the table and they'll try to hurt the Greys, who are essentially, from what I understand, fragile in terms of their physicality. And this may be why so many people are immobilized. So yeah, I think that is a problem because a per we're dangerous. We're very impulsive, violent people, and we're hurting each other. And I can see why someone would react that way. If
Mm.
something's coming at you with an alien instrument that you don't fully recognize and you don't know what's going on. So yeah, I
Well,
think that
instincts to do that, isn't it? Is to protect yourself. And so it doesn't matter
100%.
what you are as a person, how kind you are. It's look, get off. Everyone, I would think, would do that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's true with even doctors and nurses,
Mm.
who meet hostile patients are and they're trying to help them, and the patient knows this, and still they d- they're afraid, and it can be they become combative. So that's a problem, I think, with ET contact. And that's why I say it almost always starts out as being quite frightening for people. And as they're pulled on board the second, third, and fourth time, and they were healed or were given counseling or messages, they start to realize, okay, they're not trying to hurt me. It can still be very frightening, but ultimately, I would say 70 to 80% or higher get over that, particularly if they're a frequent flyer, so to speak, where they're taken on board over and over again. They sort of get used to it and like realize, okay, there was one gentleman, I didn't interview him personally, but he had Grays show up again. He was like, oh, he didn't like him, right? This was hard for him, but he finally was getting used to this. And he's like, if you're going to take me, why don't you just heal my hernia? And they said, oh, we know of this condition that you speak and we will repair it. Direct quote. And they did with a little handheld instrument. He asked them, why are you taking me? And they said, we are interested in your genetic potential to live a long time. I thought that was really interesting. His grandfather was 106 years old, still spry, still kicking. He had lots of longevity in his family. And I see this with a lot of contactees. They're enjoying excellent health or living to quite a ripe old age. So I think it's another sort of data point pointing towards, why they're taking people.
I like this one because it opens up a number of things. And some of my questions would be, are we going through a period of time, do you think, where our lifespan is incredibly shorter compared to where it perhaps should be for our species? Well, there's like tales from the Bible and stuff where people were used to live to like 900 years old and stuff, like Yoda and that. I wonder if somehow, like, over the years, there's been things on this planet, like, I don't know, some sort of radioactivity from previous nuclear explosions or whatever, that's somehow lowered our lifespan. And they're now seeing the ability for certain people to live longer, and maybe they're trying to tweak that and get us back to our original lifespan, of long, proper longevity. I wonder if that's a thing.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was recently looking at a case where ETs told the gentleman exactly that. They
Oh,
said, in
nice.
your past, you guys lived much longer, hundreds of years. We live hundreds of years. You don't because of your environmental conditions. And if you look at this from a purely scientific angle, over the last 300 years, the human lifespan has doubled. Uh, the average.
Yes.
Certainly, there were old people in the Middle Ages, but people died young. 40, 50 years old was basically when but that's the chances you were going to live about that long. And now we're living almost double that. We've got a much higher life expectancy. It's going up and up and up. And I think that
Mm,
could be in part, perhaps, this is speculation, but just
sure.
based on what the information we're getting from the contactees is that, yeah, perhaps we owe some of this to extraterrestrial intervention. I hesitate to say that because there's no concrete evidence, but there's certainly anecdotal evidence pointing towards that.
Agreed. Now, the other bit that I latched onto from Gary's story was the we're not allowed to. That opens up so many questions in the mind, does it not? Like who's not allowing you to, why, and all that sort of thing. What do you ponder on that subject?
Yeah, well, I call it an outlier because I've never heard that before.
Oh, okay.
So it's very hard to say. I don't know that there's any hierarchy going on. Uh, Perhaps, because that's sort of what it sounds like in that case. But from what I understand, just speaking about the vast majority of cases and sort of, ones that repeat, the themes that repeat over and over again, we see ETs working with each other, whether it's humans, grays, mantids, short little blue beings, tall whites. They're working in concert. I don't see any evidence, zero, of a galactic federation or kings and queens or presidents or money or federalized system or religion or anything like that, which all appear to be human inventions here on Earth. So it's hard. Some people do feel like, well, this is the person in charge, or this is the person who's orchestrating this experience. Most contactees will have an entity that is essentially their guide, their liaison. So there's something to that. But yeah, it's really hard to say why some people, we're told this kind of thing, that we can't tell you this because there are, when people talk to ETs, they will answer and they will answer your questions. But sometimes they'll be a little coy when people ask, like, where do you come from? It's like, oh, it's not important. Or,
But it is though,
sometimes
is it really is important? In fact,
uh,
that's the most important thing. So I wish they would say that and leave us with it.
they
The
sometimes
last,
do. The
oh, good.
Orion system comes up quite a bit.
Ah, yeah. Well, that plays a lot into some of the things on Earth as well, doesn't it? In terms of like the monuments and things, Orion's belt and
Correct.
God knows what else. So yeah, got to
Yeah.
be a link there. Well, the last thing I'll say on Gary's is also the hitting of them and then they're being scared and stuff suggests clearly that they're real flesh and blood creatures. Where does the sort of like androidy, roboty type of hive mind grey fit into that?
Yeah, that is something that I took me years to unpack because Whitley Strieber talked about this. Short little grays, which would be turned off and stacked up like cordwood, is how he put it. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Because I'm talking to people who have contact with these 3 foot tall little grays who sort of move in lockstep or have no emotions or, yeah, appear to be biological androids. And other times people will say, well, the gray was 4 or 5 feet tall, and I felt a love like never before, and they were very nurturing. I could smell them. They were absolutely biological. So there's clearly different types going on here. Some are quite tall, and after talking to so many contactees, particularly those who are fully conscious, uh, I got the answers, which is, this is not speculation. Yes, there are android ETs, little short biological androids who are not ensouled, as we would think of it. They don't have a soul. They are machines. They're not born, they don't die, they can be shut off. And Dolly Saffron talked about this. She said they store them in this kind of room and they're all elbows are locked together and you can turn them on, you can turn them off. And they do have some level of the ability to most emotionally interact, but generally don't. They're the workers. They're the ones who come down, pull the people out back up to the ship, where they're met with biological beings who are very much like us. So this is why people will sometimes come away from an experience like these guys had no emotions, none at all, uh, which they're right. They're
Mm.
essentially correct. But yeah, from what I understand, there's a variation of gray that is a biological android and is used in situations which might be dangerous for the actual grays. Uh, so that's kind of where my assessment at this point.
Literally just like a tool, essentially, for them, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What do you think of the term guardianship in relation to alien species and us and how the universe works? Because what I've been trying to like reconcile in my head is how the alien phenomena fits in with reincarnation, how this earth, everything to with our experiences. Are they somehow the guardians of this experiment?
Well, I wouldn't call it an experiment because I don't have any evidence of that. I think that the word guardian is probably accurate. Certainly, this is something many contactees have used, that exact word, because they do appear to look upon us as their children, or, they are our progenitors, so to speak. And they do seem to be concerned about our welfare in terms of how we're treating ourselves, each other, and this planet. So I think calling them guardians is fair enough. And they will say things. A very common message ETs will give contactees is, we are you, you are us, we are all one. Really, in that exact phrasing.
Mm.
I've heard it so many times. It's always kind of a joy to me when I hear this coming from a contactee. Many contactees who, by the way, don't read the literature. They stay away from it. They're frightened. It's a journey to pick up a UFO book. It's like they see the cover of Whitley Strieber's book and they throw it across. No, they don't want to do that. And there's little details that are not well known, and that's used to not be well known, I should say, because now this information is getting out there. But yeah, I think that they do kind of act that way. They're giving us warnings over and over again about the dangers of nuclear proliferation. That's when onboard experiences ramped up 100%, 500%. I mean, it was unheard of before the atomic age, people being taken on board. And now it's fairly common. And that's the message they almost always give. You're on the wrong pathway. You're on the pathway towards self-destruction. Don't use atomic weapons. You're damaging areas you're not even aware of. You have the potential to destroy all life on Earth. What are you doing? So is something a guardian would say. Uh, and no, they're not going to come down and take over and solve all our problems, because people have asked them that too. They said, no, we can't do that. You have free will. You've gotten yourself into this mess. It's up to you to solve your own problems. There was a guy in Austria during war times, and he started arguing with them. He's like, well, you could just come down and fix things. Our governments are so corrupt. They said, no, you are in a much better position to do that than we are. We don't live here. We look different. It's up to you to do it. We cannot do that. So that would cause an absolute collapse of society as we know it. If ETs were to come down and say, basically, you know what? We're done with you. We're taking over.
Yeah,
I'd
well,
welcome
you
it.
can't do that, can you? You only have to relate it back to, like, say, an addict in relation to alcohol. People can tell them you need to stop drinking, you need to do this, that, and the other, but it's only that person that can do it by taking responsibility. So I
Yeah, good
imagine it's
analogy.
exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to move slightly ajar into your local cases series. I like that what you do here, by the way. Like here's 10 cases over Colorado, here's 10 cases over whatever. And I know I challenged you on Heather Wade's group to do, please do one of Gloucester. I would like to see that done. But where are you planning on doing this series like forever, do you think?
I'm afraid that I've gotten myself into a situation that I can't get out of.
Correct.
Because I've now got 1,000, or it's 976 locations given to me to look up.
Now you
And
have to do it, yeah.
it's very tedious research. It takes an incredible amount of time and energy and effort to find these places, particularly if it's, some common name like Springville or something, some
Oh yeah.
town where there's probably 30 of them on this planet. So I'm having a little bit of a difficult time with it, but I'm proving my point that UFOs are ubiquitous, that every location on this planet has been visited, because I'm batted 100%. I've explored some 150 locations so far, and every single darn one of them has a history of encounters. A few have been just one or two, but generally, it's 5, 10, 20. In some places, I'm not, I'd have to write a whole book, honestly. When I explored Tucson, Arizona, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Here's, 30 cases. I'm not gonna, go any deeper with this because I've proved it. I'm having so much fun with this. This was such a wonderful suggestion that someone's like, look up something in my town. I'm like, "Oh, this is a good idea." I bet because it's important to make a point here. And one is that UFO encounters are far more common than people realize. If they're visiting every single place on our planet, how many cases are there? Another is that, why? Why would they do this? I think it's an indication of sort of the very vigorous and well orchestrated publicity campaign that they're doing to show themselves to all humanity. So I think those are the real takeaways here. But how how cool it is when someone says, "Oh, I bet you won't find one in Inikinuk, Canada." I'm just making up a name, but
Yeah,
I did. I found
it's a
one
good
there. It was
name.
something like and people are giving me these obscure towns. I'm like, "Oh, you rascal. You're just trying to trip me up." But can't do it. I found them.
Good. I do I like that, but you have, like you said, created a millstone around your own neck. But it's a good thing to do, and I do like the sentiment behind it. Which leads me to this question: is there, do you think, any place on Earth where zero cases come from? I.e., can we point to a country where there is a conspicuous absence?
No, 100% no. Perhaps you can find some little town of 500 people, 200 people, because I was nearly stumped on a couple of those. I'm like, wait a second, there's 50 people who live in this town. You're
Mm.
killing me here. But I found one. And that was, I think, just a lucky fluke, because I know sooner or later someone's going to come up with something. And there are vast areas where there are extremely low populations, and there's no real observers there. So it'd be hard to say. But I sincerely doubt, and I would be willing to go on record as saying pretty much no way is there any single country that has not had an encounter. Every single country on this planet has absolutely been visited. There's some 200 countries on this planet. If people were to just give me a country, I'd be done with this thing already.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
know, so yeah, I can find one in any country, certainly. But some a place like China, it's difficult to investigate China. Thankfully, I do have a book, UFOs Over China by Paul Dong, but it's the only book I've got on China. And some guys like Pakistan, do Pakistan. I found a bunch of cases in Pakistan. No problem, easy peasy. So yeah, every country. I don't doubt it for a second.
Sure. Yeah. So the only issues you'll have will be the dissemination of information from like the tightly controlled countries like North Korea, as an example, and like you said, China.
Yep.
China's an interesting one because I know they've got such amazing archaeology there as well, haven't they? With potential pyramids and stuff that they cover up and things. And you just think to yourself, come on, allow humanity to see everything. I really wish we could do that as a global species, but we just don't seem to. I want to branch into your YouTube channel now, which is obviously where you see your local case series. What do you get most out of your interviews, the Lightgate joint interviews, or your research videos?
What do I get most out of?
Yeah, what is most exciting for you?
Oh gosh. Um, I would say it's a fair trade with all of them. I absolutely love putting together these videos for my YouTube channel because I'm diving deeper than, almost the vast majority of researchers out there into the humanoid cases and doing it in a way that I make a sincere, concerted effort to be objective and not push a fear narrative and not push a Space Brothers quote narrative. Just report the facts as we know them and dig deep. I've gotten pretty good at researching over the years so that I can find the locations and find the people and find the documents. And it's so much fun when I like, wow, I found what I was looking for. And it's really obscure. I mean, there was a case in this tiny little village in France, and I knew the name of the witness, and there, all the write-ups on this case were very vague. And yet I found like 10 of them. And finally, I found a little film clip of the witness being interviewed. I'm like, oh, look at that. So I was able to, I love it when you get those rare nuggets of, or when you are investigating a case and you find confirmation of another case that occurred in that area at that time. So that's a lot of fun. I'm having so much fun with that. But it's also terrific fun to, contact researchers who are prominent in this field and, interview them on the Lightgate, which I do with Dolly Saffron, because we got to talk to James Fox. How
I know
cool is
that's lush.
that? I'm like, wow, I did not think he would respond. We got to talk to Michael Cremo. I read his book in college when I was, taking all these science courses, and he destroyed the academic industry because, I'm taking anthropology classes and they're all contradicting each other and nobody knows anything. I'm like, these guys are teaching me nonsense. And I found his book. I learned more from his book than in, 4 years of college. And I got to talk to him, and it was such a delight. And talking to
I
people
love
like,
that you've reacted the same way that I do, right? Let's be fair. You're in the public arena, so to speak. I'm just some random dude, right? But I was feeling the same way when you first said yes to me 2 years ago, and you're getting that same feeling from speaking to the people that you look up to and stuff. And I love that.
yeah, I'm just some random dude too.
I know
I
we all
really
are
am.
really, and we're just
But
different. But
yeah,
you're more in the spotlight in this compared to perhaps I would be. But it's the same principle. We're all the same person, aren't we? And
yeah.
getting joy out of the things we love, and I like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. I got to talk to Kathleen Marden. That was all ki kinds of interesting. It's really, really interesting when, perhaps I can convince one of the people I've interviewed in my books to come on and share their story because that's pretty rare. The average contactee does not want to go public, does not want their name to be used. So there's levels of, you know, joy and exploration to all of this that I'm having a great time with it. Michael Schratt, if you've ever interviewed him, you've got to interview him. He
I
is the
think I've asked
man.
him. Yeah,
Yeah, he's amazing.
he's the
There's
one that
still
does
some
the
folks.
crash craft. Yeah, and does his
Yeah,
yeah.
I asked Chris Bledsoe, and I got this close,
Ah,
but not nothing yet. So, yeah, it's difficult to get some of these people to agree because there's how many people in this field exploring the subject? A lot.
correct.
So, but yeah, I've spoken with Whitley Strieber a number of times, not on our podcast, but he's had me on, which is always a joy because I read his book when I was, pretty young. I'm like, wow, I look up to him and all anyone who gets into this field and is willing to brave the ridicule and disbelief. Kudos to you. So I think it's awesome to talk to these people.
Great, and I feel the same way about talking to you. And naturally, Whitley would have felt the same way about talking to you. It's just you don't think of yourself in that way, do you? Because you're just a bloke, like I'm a bloke. And they probably think the same about themselves as well.
Yeah, I really wish that our government would just come clean and on this subject because, yeah, I'm just a guy. I have a very limited budget, and while I do have some scientific background, I don't have the resources to solve all these. I hate calling it a mystery. I don't think of it as a mystery anymore, the UFO phenomenon, because I think we've got a pretty good handle on what's going on. But I really feel like we could make much quicker progress if we just threw a lot more time, money, and attention at this, which our governments have, but they're not truthful and transparent. So it's time for truth and transparency on this subject. And until and unless that happens, I'm going to keep plugging away because I think it's an important subject.
Completely agree with you. Another slightly sideways step. We touched on this last time, or at least you mentioned it. Angel hair. For the viewers and listeners, what is angel hair? And if you can just tell us a little bit about it in any relevant cases.
Yes, angel hair is a wispy substance, somewhat similar in appearance, I should say, to perhaps spider webs or cotton candy, which of course it's not either of those. It's a substance that apparently is due to a reaction from the very high energy, high heat plasma fields surrounding craft as they move through the atmosphere. There's been a lot of speculation about where exactly it comes from. Are these craft emitting it or what's going on here? But that's my current assessment that no, it's really a reaction with elements within our atmosphere. And I say this because of contactees who've been on board when it happens or were told. And there's probably one, two, 300 cases in the literature, which with a million accounts is substantially rare,
Mm.
but very well confirmed and attested. This is a substance that generally falls in smaller quantities and sublimes or dissipates, dissolves almost immediately upon touching the ground, or certainly when you pick it up. But not always. There was a case like blocks away from where I grew up. In fact, I actually interviewed a lady who it happened on her street. Well, when I was documenting the case, she's like, that's where I lived, uh, where it covered the telephone poles and the cars and stuff, and military folks came up and gathered it. There was a case in Marysville, Ohio in the 60s at a elementary school where it came down in huge quantities. It was right over the school. Children were playing in it, the principal, the teachers, folks from Lockbourne Air Force Base got a sample of it and said that they would get back to, the principal who provided the sample and never did. Never got back to him. There was another case at a school in North Carolina, Whitsett Elementary School. It was like a year later, almost to the day, oddly enough. Again, same thing, huge quantities of this angel hair-like substance. In fact, one kid scooped it up and put it in his mouth before the teacher could stop him. And he
Kids are
spit,
great, aren't they?
gotta love him. It looks like cotton candy. Why not?
Yeah.
He spit it out. He said it was salty and tasted bitter and bad. But they gathered a sample, which was preserved, sent it to Burlington Scientific Labs, who said, "We don't know what this is. Could possibly be spider webs. We don't think so. You might try a biologist." So they did. They sent it to a biologist, and the biologist said flat out, "No, this is not spider webs for various reasons." So, did you see any spiders? No, there were no spiders. He says, well, you would have seen spiders with that volume. The sample was then stolen. At any rate, it has been collected and studied scientifically and shown to contain elements like magnesium, I think, boron, and other elements that shouldn't be just floating around there. There was a case in France, Oleron, where it came down in huge quantities, again, weirdly over a school. Uh, that's tying in with these schoolyard encounters.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, cases reaching back well over 100 years. Some they called it different things uh, depending on the country or culture that it was in. Uh, but absolutely well verified physical evidence that's undeniably connected to the UFO phenomena. And I think represents, another form of evidence that really proves the validity of this subject and is often overlooked, but an important little aspect of what's going on here that is still poorly understood.
Yeah, the whole where it dissipates kind of thing is very odd, especially when you consider the samples that are taken which haven't dissipated.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's just
It
an
is,
odd scenario. Yeah, it makes you think. Obviously, I get what you're saying. There's a craft, the plasma field around it, or whatever that field is interacting with whatever's in the atmosphere, thus creating this substance, and then it drops. Um, but amazing that it happens in certain circumstances and not in every UFO case, obviously.
yeah, it is, initially I thought it was something being released by these craft, but after talking to contactees like Dolly Saffron, she's like, oh, no, no, you know, I know exactly what's going on here because they told me. So I think honestly, that's what's going on is it's in a reaction to our
Yeah,
atmosphere, the
reaction from the
pollution.
yeah. Can you see it from inside the craft being created? Do you think?
Gosh, I don't know about that. I've not heard that, so really couldn't answer that question.
No, that's fair enough. I just wondered if there were any cases of someone saying, "Yeah, we've been told it," or you can see it from outside the craft being like created in the field or whatever. But
I do know of a
interesting.
couple of cases where people were in the craft when they were scooping up electricity off the telephone lines,
Whoa.
which is interesting because so many craft have been seen right over telephone lines that people have speculated, well, perhaps they're scooping up because some electricity is wasted, and there are power outages associated with UFO encounters as well. So I've got a few cases of that, which is interesting. I
Some of the
saw
big
the other day.
blackouts, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, awesome stuff. There's so many niche avenues that you could look in this whole subject, and that is why you've done a shed load of books, isn't it? I know you like the niches.
Yeah, I absolutely love finding patterns, little avenues of research that perhaps are people are reluctant to explore or haven't explored or have not
Mm.
seen these patterns. Like when I found out the schoolyard encounters was the thing, I was floored. I'm like, why, how come nobody noticed this? I was wrong, of course. Some people had noticed it, but no one had really done a deep dive on it. But one thing I'm really proud of is the book I wrote on UFOs over drive-in theaters. Because I had a few cases and then ran into three in a row. I'm like, ooh, this is a thing. I bet it is. And of course it was. I found 100 cases and still finding them. And these are your typical display. They come down right over the screen. This is not a flyby random at night. They are being targeted 100% right over the screen, right to either side. And they'll put on a display. They'll flash their lights. They'll dart around. They'll release smaller craft. It's amazing. These are very low level, widely viewed sightings, and almost nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, which is strange because that should be in the like on the main news, shouldn't it?
Yeah. It
I know the
often reaches the
baseball one.
local news.
You know the one years ago, the one that was over the baseball field. Was that in America or Canada? I can't remember.
I know there was one soccer match in Italy. That one was super famous. There's scattered ones over sporting events, and concerts, but certainly nothing like schoolyards and drive-in theaters. Because I looked, yeah, there's some over concerts. I found maybe 20, and same with sporting events. Because I thought I would, I'm like, this is going to be a thing. I'm going to find 100. No, I couldn't. So I don't know. Hard to say why that hasn't been chosen. Because I think that
Yeah.
would be an ideal event.
Do you know what makes me kind of frustrated in the same vein that you would be in relation to this is that when those things happen over sporting stadiums and that, it's like why isn't that reviewed over and over and over again by the media? Because it's such a big thing that it should be we should be reviewing this every month or year or whatever. What's going on? And it never is. It's like, oh, here it is over a stadium, and then the next day it's someone's Kardashian's ass or whatever on the news, and you think to yourself, what's more important?
Yeah, the media is a strange creature, isn't it?
Mm.
Because what they do is they latch on a story and they'll beat it to death and then they'll move on. And what's interesting is these stories do have legs. They do survive and they are repeated, but the cover-up is no joke. There is a media blackout on this subject. Make no mistake about it. This has been proven. There's a book by, I forget his first name, Mr. Hansen, called The Missing Times, where he basically proved in black and white that there is an absolute cover-up of information in mainstream media. And we'll see a few cases that are so large and widely viewed that they break through that wall and are covered in the mainstream media. A couple of cases per year, maybe. We'll get international coverage. Remember that one in Russia at Voronezh, where a bunch of children saw UFO land, and
Oh, yes, yeah.
that, that one broke through. Of course, Gulf breeze, and some of these waves of sightings, one in Belgium, or a particular incident like the Phoenix Lights. So that does happen, but that's happening constantly all over the world, and none of it is being covered. It's not being portrayed in the media. Why? Because there's a cover up. The folks in charge are doing everything they can. It's a very well concerted, very well funded, very carefully planned cover up and suppression of information and evidence, inserted with a fear based narrative and flat out disinformation and lies. So it's a real mess to get to the truth.
That it certainly is. And is this the truth? Because I can't remember if we spoke about this last time, but it's a question I've written for you anyway. Living in the Matrix, are we? Is this an illusion? Are we in a computer game or not?
No, I don't believe that for a second. I think that's purely speculative based on zero evidence whatsoever. Um, if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone know? Does it make a sound? Of course it does. I mean, let's not be ridiculous here. UFOs they exist whether we're here or not, as do animals. No, this is not a matrix. This is not, a computer simulation or anything like that. I think basic science proves this. And people really need to just go back to square one and do science 101 and realize, no, we live in a third dimensional universe. And if you fall off a cliff, you're dead. This there are laws that our universe follows. It's not a matrix. And people say, oh, glitches in the matrix. The paranormal is a misnomer. Uh, Supernatural is a misnomer. These things are not breaking the laws of the universe. These are not glitches. These are glitches in our understanding. These are, faults in our ability to understand the mechanics behind what's going on here. Ghosts aren't supernatural. They're real. They're an event that's actually happening. We don't fully understand how it works. Doesn't mean that it's a simulation or a matrix or anything like this. That's why I encourage people to develop your psychic abilities, learn astral projection, and you can move beyond the third dimension in an experiential, first-hand way and know for a fact that there is life after death. So there is a sort of interesting aspect to it. And I think that's where the idea of the matrix comes from, because thoughts are very powerful and you can create things with thoughts. And there's a whole creative aspect to life here on Earth. But no, I don't think we're creating it out of our minds. It's not a hallucination. This is a hard frame reality that we live in. And we're not the only ones here. There's all kinds of entities out there.
Yeah,
That's
no,
my
fair enough.
assessment.
I ask a lot of people that question, but it's an interesting one. Because I think however you look at this question is how you can answer it. You've gone with the no, you don't think it's a matrix, right? And that's fair enough, and I can understand exactly what you said and the reasons why. Is this 3D reality world? Yes. Has it been created by conscious thoughts? Because I hear from a lot of other guests as well that consciousness has created this 3D reality world as a way for us to then experience, so to speak. So can we argue that it is a matrix of sorts that we've built for this experience? Or has it always
I
been
think from
here
a
and then?
very, yeah, from a very high spiritual perspective, I'd say that in a sense that does could be accurate
Yeah,
because we all come from source. You know, the universe, God, call it what you want, the spirit which moves through all things. From what I understand, actually, astral projection is a misnomer because we're projecting down here into the third dimension, and that the universe, sure, you can say it's composed of thought if you want. Consciousness is the ruling force of the universe. So in a way, I guess you could say that that's true. But I think that the way people are talking about it is incorrect. Uh, and it just makes my skin crawl sometimes when I hear some of these theories. I'm like, what are you saying? It's fine to have a theory and speculate. In fact, speculation is crucial for the advancement of scientific knowledge. But don't start asserting your opinions as fact and saying all this is real when you don't have a single thing to back this up.
I agree on that. I think thinking loads of different theories about how everything works is amazing. But you should never rule anything out, and you should never say this is, because you don't know. So that backs what you're saying there.
Yeah, until you know, you don't know.
You don't. That's
Exactly.
it. That's it.
And that's why I encourage people, don't believe a thing I say. Do your research. Look into onboard experiences, and you'll see that overall, this is something that's good for humanity. Don't believe me if, about the other side and seeing loved ones. Do it yourself. You can. And then you'll know that we absolutely do survive life after death, and there is another dimension out there. Do it. It's amazing.
I know. I have tried, Preston. I think we spoke about this last time. I tried to do the out of body experience, and I know you're highly involved in that, and we plan to talk about it. I'll have to save it for another occasion in the future if that's okay, because it's a massive topic, like you said. But I tried to do these things. I failed personally, but it doesn't mean others will.
It takes time, effort, and there's a steep learning curve for a lot of people.
Mm.
But, like anything, learning a foreign language can take years. I took French for 7 years. I can speak it. I can hardly understand it. It takes me, I speak slowly and I
Yeah.
can start to, but it's like learning a computer program or a new video game. You might pick it up right away. Learning how to play guitar, not easy to do. But if you keep at it, you start to pick up those chords and you can play a song after a while. It's exactly like that. So I think if you, it just, learn, I'd say the most accurate would be learning how to become a doctor. That takes years and you have to
Oh yeah,
commit
keep on
yourself.
and on and on. Mm.
It's all about applied knowledge. You need the tools to know how to do it. But it's worth it. I can say that. And anyone who's listening, I will send you a little guide. My email is prestonufo@gmail.com. Feel free to contact me and I will send you this 2-page guide, which honest to God, if you follow these steps and are diligent and persistent and really do this on a daily basis, it shouldn't take you more than a couple of months to maybe 6 months on the outside. But again, how much time and effort are you willing to put forth?
Well, that's it,
Well,
isn't it? It's how much are you willing to do? I'll be fair. I tried, and I think it was lucid dreaming. I tried for I think about 2 months from memory. I mean, this must have been a decade ago when I tried it, and I didn't get to the level where I wanted to be. I didn't do it. But maybe I should have persevered longer, and that's my fault.
took me a while. Absolutely. It wasn't because I was trying to lucid dream. I couldn't do it. It wasn't until I got the steps to do out of body stuff that took me about 2 months.
Well, I'm going to raise my hand, Preston, and say then, can you send me that guide of yours, and I'll try it.
I sure will, yeah.
Thanks kindly. I genuinely will do that as well. But for now, we're going to have our own out of body experience as we enter, for the second time for Preston, the Koit Zone. Koit Zone! So here we go. It's the random questions now, Preston, before we
Oh
wrap
no.
up. I know it's all easy stuff, really. What is the
Okay.
last movie you watched?
Oh gosh. Huh. I do watch some TV. What's the last movie? I haven't been to a movie theater in the longest time. I do want to see How to Train Your Dragon. I'm trying to think here.
The
What was
cartoon version or the live action?
the live action one?
That was not so long
I
ago then,
think
yeah.
I watched Overboard with Goldie Hawn, and Kurt Russell
That's a good film.
just recently. It's I've seen it before, but I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's a riot. I just think it's the funniest movie. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a good film.
that's one I did watch recently. I'm not sure if that's the last one, but
Well, if you remember between now and the end of these questions, please prompt him with it. But if it's overboard, that's still a good film anyway. Next question: who's your favorite UFO researcher?
my favorite, well, my favorite living would probably be Michael Schratt, but my favorite non-living one would be Coral Lorenzen. She's the one who founded APRO with her husband, Jim Lorenzen. She was, we wouldn't be talking right now if it wasn't for her. They started the first UFO citizens group and really just changed the face of UFO research. And Michael Schratt, I love him. He dives deep. He's very objective. He's working very hard. He's incredibly passionate. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that there's hundreds of people out there I really admire.
No, that's fair enough.
Leo Sprinkle and of course Jalen Hynek and Dr. James McDonald and lots of really wonderful. I love Timothy Good. I wish he would write more, but I think he's kind of stopped at this point. But yeah, many, many wonderful researchers out there.
Lush, thank you. What is the most ill you've ever been?
Ill.
Ill,
Oh
yeah.
gosh. I've enjoyed excellent health, actually. Got knock on wood. I did get strep throat really bad as a kid. That was difficult. And once I was injured on a rusty spike in the ocean and had to get
What?
13 stitches. So
That's random.
yeah, I could have, the doctor said I could have been, scarred for life and limped or lost a leg, but the waves just kind of washed me off of the spike. What they washed me into it too, but
What was it? Like
uh,
a spike on a wreck or something?
a spike on a underwater rock at a
Oh, I see. Like a
beach.
piece of coral or something.
Yeah, I had to get uh, tetanus shots, and I was 13 years old. The ambulance never came. I was carried up a cliff by a line of people, and finally they just put me in the back of a police car and turned on the siren, and off I went to the emergency room. I got food poisoning really bad once too. I never ate at that restaurant for a year. I
And what
won't I
what was
won't
that?
name
What
them.
was it that got you?
A burrito.
Oh, there you go. Never eat
Old.
burritos.
I love them too. So, but boy, that got me so sick. They sent me a bill for like $40,000. I'm like, wait a second, I got insurance. What are you doing? So
That's
I didn't have to pay, but
that's mental though, isn't it? For people without insurance, it's 40 grand for food poisoning.
I almost died. Yeah, that was terrible.
Wow. So that literally is the most ill you've ever been then. What popular food or drink item do you hate?
Um, I hate tofu. Don't like Brussels sprouts. Can't
Yeah, they're
stand them.
gross.
Um, and not a huge fan of shrimp or, raw fish. What do you call it? Sushi. No, that's not going into my mouth. Sorry.
No, I don't blame you on that one, mate. I would be the same. Sod that. Um, when you pass over, how would you like to be remembered? Plaque on a bench or something else?
Oh gosh, I'd just like to be remembered for perhaps my research that I've done or all the people that, I've had the honor to associate with and, you know, just share experiences. And I've always tried hard to do the right thing and leave this world a better place. So I think that's how I would like to be remembered.
Nice. Well, it's a good sentiment. Do you have a favorite possession?
I don't own anything of any value. I do have a little frog, a ceramic frog that I bought my mother when I was 9 years old when I visited Catalina Island, and I gave it to her, and she passed on. So I took it back, and I still have it. And it's a little, what do you call it, nostalgic memento that I do treasure, but there's no value to it. I'd say my favorite possession is my 50-inch wide TV. We finally got a nice big flat screen TV. I love it.
There you go then. Well, that's still two lovely ones that you mentioned, and I get that. The sentimental thing, it doesn't matter about monetary value because monetary doesn't really exist, does it? Money is nothing. Sentiment means
Exactly.
most. Who's playing you in a movie of your life?
Oh my gosh. John Malkovich.
Yes. Now that
People
I
keep
can see.
saying,
Yeah.
like, are you related to John Malkovich? I'm like, what? After like the 20th time, I'm like, fine, I'm gonna have to contact him. Maybe we're secretly related.
Yeah. Preston Malkovich. That is brilliant. Long lost brother. Yeah, but he would play you in that, but that makes complete sense. What's in your pocket right now?
I love these questions. Well,
Good.
let me see. I've got my keys, and that's about it. And my wallet. That's
Excellent.
all I got.
I won't ask you what's in your wallet, but you didn't show us the murder weapons in your other pocket.
Um, no, I'm not going to show you that.
That's right. Okay. I don't know why I've written two questions on hate because that's clearly not a good sentiment to go with. But what do you hate to do? Stuff like around the house that we have to do. What do you hate to do?
Oh gosh. I can't say I really hate anything, but I don't really like doing laundry that much. It's a chore. I'll
Yes.
do it. I don't hate it, but it's not something I really enjoy. Uh, I don't mind cleaning dishes, uh, scrubbing floors. That's a pain because they get dirty so fast.
Oh, with all the blood from the murders.
Exactly.
A side question for you here, right? On ironing. Do you do ironing?
I have never ironed in my life. And sometimes I've showed up wrinkled for a TV interview and they're like, oh, what's wrong with you? Get the iron. Uh, I don't even know that I have an iron. I think I do. But no, I've never ironed.
Fair enough. It's a question I'm intrigued by because I, I do iron in because it was drummed into me as a youngster, but Tiff doesn't iron. And I wonder how widespread it is, whether people do or don't do it. I need to ask this question more often, I think, to find out. That's my research. Okay, last question in the Koit zone. I would like you, Preston, please, to pick an object from your background there and tell us the story of it. Any object whatsoever.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, let me think here. Hmm. I will pick maybe crystals here.
All right, yellow
These are,
crystals.
yeah, these were given to me by someone who saw a video that I did about my out of body experiences, where I described where I was taken to the other side by my mother, and she took me to the garden realms and showed me all this stuff, but then took me up to a higher realm where there was these crystals everywhere. She pointed to the ground and turned it orange, like this. It looked very much like this, and told me to put some of this stuff in my mouth. Like, what? Are you crazy? It's like, no, do it, do it. And I did, and it tasted like orange candy or orange. I don't know, it tasted super orange, oranger than I've ever had anything taste. And it was just this really cool. deeply spiritual and very personal and profound experience that I had that I treasure. And I shared it
No,
in
fair
one of my
play.
videos. And one lady was so moved by it, she's like, "Can I send you a present?" And she sent me these, and it was just the sweetest thing. That, there you go. You can get a
That's a
close up
nice
of it.
reminder, yeah. Can I ask a question about that experience? Were you tasting color, or was it something that was that led you to something? Or you had to taste this to be able to get this ability or something?
Um, I don't know if I can answer that. I will say it tasted like orange juice or orange. I think orange is the only fruit that is actually a color, isn't it? We don't eat a purple or a blue. Um, so, or a green. There's, nothing.
Ah, we
So,
do eat greens.
oh, well, I suppose you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
And they do taste green, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, very much
So,
so.
yeah, I mean, I suppose that's fair enough. But after that experience, I will say I became a huge fan of orange juice. Absolutely.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe you were developing scurvy, and it was a way to tell you, look, you need to eat oranges.
Entirely possible.
Well, excellent. Thank you for sharing that little story with me and those objects. The last question as we exit the Koit zone is this, as always, what are you currently working on?
I'm currently working on a sequel to my book, Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure, about the experiences of Dolly Saffron. Always working on another video for my YouTube channel, which takes an obscene amount of time and effort. And working on my car, trying to keep the house in repair, which is constant. And you have to cook for yourself. I mean, it's always something I'm working on.
Mm,
But yeah, I'm working on another book about my own out of body experiences, another on supernatural events. So I keep busy.
excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for appearing once again. I've really appreciated your time and your candor. Preston, thank you ever so much.
A true pleasure and honor. Thank you.
Thank you, kind sir. Everyone watching, please check out the links in the description to Preston's sites, etc. And we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everyone. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.